Dawn Wiener was a shy, unpopular girl who always felt like she didn't belong. Every day at school was a quiet struggle. Even during lunch, she wandered through the crowded cafeteria, searching for an empty seat, only to find that no one wanted her around. Eventually, she sat beside a gloomy girl who looked just as withdrawn as her, but even that moment turned sour. Dawn's presence rarely went unnoticed, for all the wrong reasons. Her classmates treated her like an outsider. Rumors spread. Her name became the target of cruel gossip, and her locker turned into a canvas for hateful messages. She tried to stand up for someone once, a boy being bullied, but instead of appreciation, she received insults. Even the boy she tried to protect turned against her, adding to the humiliation. At home, things weren't any better. Her younger sister, Missy, was clearly the favorite, loved, spoiled, and always protected. Dawn's older brother, Mark, was a clueless nerd, lost in his garage band dreams. Their mother always seemed to take Missy's side, leaving Dawn alone and misunderstood. When she tried to speak up or do the right thing, it always backfired. A classmate cheated off her during a test, and when she reported it, both of them were punished. No one cared about fairness, only appearances. Each small moment added up, painting a life where Dawn felt invisible, rejected, and trapped between silence and judgment. The world around her kept moving, full of noise and laughter, while she quietly endured, hoping one day someone might finally see her. Not as a joke, not as a target, but as a person who mattered. Dawn Wiener was used to being overlooked, misunderstood, and blamed. Even at home, things were no different. Her sister Missy, ever annoyed by Dawn's presence, one day asked their mother to send her away to a correctional facility, just to stop bothering her. But their mother, as always, brushed it off with a smile, telling Missy that Dawn loved her and that sisters needed to stick together. Despite this outward kindness, the mother clearly favored Missy. She demanded that Dawn apologize and even insisted that she say she loved her sister. Dawn, stubborn and quietly hurting, refused. She sat silently, unwilling to play along with the family's false harmony. That night, in quiet rebellion, Dawn sawed the head off Missy's mermaid Barbie. It wasn't rage, it was release. Afterward, almost in a trance, she wandered into the garage where her brother's band rehearsed. To her surprise, the rumors were true. Her brother had actually convinced Steve Rogers, one of the most popular boys in school, to join the band. Steve wasn't just handsome, he had presence, confidence, and a voice that stood out even in the chaos of bad music. That night, Dawn couldn't sleep. Something had changed. She had fallen in love. At school, student Mary gave a speech to younger children about the importance of staying quiet. She shared a story of being kidnapped a year earlier while walking home. Her words were meant to inspire, but while she spoke, Dawn sat nearby, distracted and frustrated. In a moment of impulse, she rolled up a piece of slobbery paper and fired it through a pen tube, hitting a teacher in the eye by accident. Soon after, Dawn and her parents were called to the principal's office. Her mother, showing little support, scolded her, claiming she didn't even have friends on the street. The teacher, still rubbing his injured eye, stared at Dawn like a predator would a cornered animal. Days later, Steve Rogers visited Mark again. After her brother left the room, Dawn, in her pajamas, snuck in and just stood there, staring. To her surprise, Steve didn't shoo her away. They shared a quiet moment, bonding over how much they both hated school. For Dawn, it was everything. She even managed to reach out and touch his arm, just for a second, before Mark stormed back in and threw her out. Meanwhile, Mark received a breakup letter from a girl he met at summer camp. It was her third letter, and her tone made it clear. If he didn't reply within 10 days, she was moving on. And yet, amid all the rejection, disappointment, and awkward silence, Dawn, for the first time, felt something real. Mark had recently broken up with his girlfriend, even though she had been ready for a deeper relationship. But for a bespectacled boy like him, passing exams, and securing a spot in college took priority over love. In contrast, Steve Rogers, the school heartthrob, had no such reservations. He pursued any girl willing to go all the way, regardless of who she was. Rumors said he even flirted with scarecrow-like girls and underclassmen. Curious and slightly obsessed, Dawn set out to confirm these rumors. She approached the local redhead, Ginger, who casually admitted to doing some hand stuff with Steve during the previous summer. But Ginger made it clear Dawn didn't stand a chance. Still, Dawn looked at herself in the mirror, then at her untouched hand, dreaming of possibilities. One afternoon, fate handed her a moment. Steve came over while she was home alone. She invited him inside and offered him food. He accepted, casually helping himself to the cash lying on the table. Dawn said nothing. She just watched this golden boy devour her offerings like a starved god. To impress him, she played the piano, making sure her fingers moved elegantly, as if every note was part of her silent seduction. As Steve prepared to leave, he accidentally dropped his student ID. Dawn picked it up like a sacred object and whispered to it as if casting a spell. In her mind, he would love her, deeply, truly. She became the band's only real fan, her eyes always fixed on Steve as he played. When a few nerds criticized him, Steve snapped. He had only tolerated the band to get help in computer science. But now, he didn't care about failing. He quit, loudly and proudly. Later, Dawn and a friend were harassed by bullies in a store. Frustrated, Dawn called Brandon mentally unstable and walked away. That set something off in him. He began following her, warning her that he would wake her at 3 p.m. He reminded her of it constantly, turning every encounter into a threat. Even when distracted by other girls, his eyes remained locked on Dawn. When the final school bell rang, Dawn tried to escape through the back exit, but it was too late. One of the bullies was already there, waiting. Dawn's fear turned real when the bully finally cornered her. This time, he had a knife. Without a word, he ordered her to undress. But fate intervened. Just then, the janitor emerged from a nearby doorway, unknowingly giving Dawn the chance to flee. Back home, her mother remained blissfully unaware of Dawn's silent suffering. Cheerfully, she announced they would be celebrating their 20th wedding anniversary with a party in the backyard. This meant they would tear down Dawn's little shack, a quiet corner she had made her own. Later that evening, Brandon called again. His voice was cold, promising to finish what he started. Same time, same place, and this time she was to come alone. Or else. Dawn obeyed. The next day, he led her at knife point to an abandoned barn. Strangely calm, she lay down on the hay, refusing his offer of a cigarette. As the tension faded, they talked. Brandon confessed he had a mentally challenged brother named Tommy. Sometimes, he said, he lost control because of it. It was the first time Dawn saw a trace of vulnerability in him. Then, without warning, he leaned in and kissed her. Just a brief moment. He stood up, saying there wasn't enough time for what he had planned. Before leaving, he warned her never to tell anyone. At home, things felt colder. Her mother scolded her children for their failures. Mark's band had collapsed now that Steve Rogers, its only talent, had quit. There would be no music at the anniversary party. Dawn refused to tear down her little shack, and, as punishment, her mother served chocolate cake to everyone but her. Mark, desperate, offered Steve $200 to play at the party. Dawn saw a glimmer of hope, another chance to watch the boy she loved.
But things were changing. Over the school loudspeakers, the principal announced that drugs had been found in the restroom. The culprit would be expelled once identified. Meanwhile, the popular girl, Cookie, reminded everyone about her birthday party. When Brandon asked why he hadn't been invited, Cookie gave a weak excuse. Frustrated, Brandon pulled something from his bag, wrapped in notebook paper, Everyone froze, but it wasn't dangerous. It was just leftover cookies from lunch. He looked at Cookie and asked if he could come to the party now, but she dismissed him again, mocking his gesture. Enraged, Brandon slammed his fist into Dawn's locker. And yet, despite everything, that evening, Dawn and Brandon ended up sitting together again, in her little shack, the one place no one else cared about, but where two broken people found a strange kind of silence. After everything that happened, Brandon finally apologized. He regretted slamming her locker and was genuinely upset that Dawn's little shack, her secret haven, was going to be torn down. Then, without warning, he kissed her again. But this time Dawn didn't respond with hope. Instead, her voice was quiet, almost trembling, as she confessed she couldn't be with him. She loved someone else. When Brandon asked who, she simply replied, "You wouldn't know him." Anger quickly overtook him. Feeling rejected, he shoved her to the ground and stormed off. The house was alive with celebration. Guests had filled the backyard for the holiday party. Mark was on stage, performing with Steve, but no one noticed Dawn was missing. Eventually, Dawn stepped out, hesitant and lonely. She approached Steve and awkwardly invited him to join her club of special people. Embarrassed, Steve misunderstood the name, assumed it was something inappropriate, and shut the door in her face. After the party, Steve dropped out of school and moved to New York. At home, Dawn's family laughed while watching a tape from the anniversary party. That night, Dawn got up silently, picked up a hammer, and smashed the tape. In her heart, she wished she could do the same to her sister's head. Brandon no longer looked at her. Not at school, not anywhere. One day, the principal entered class with police. Brandon was called out without explanation. After school, Dawn's mother had to leave urgently and left Dawn with a note to give to Missy. It instructed her to go home with her ballet teacher. Dawn took the note, but later fell asleep watching TV. When the phone rang, it was Missy's best friend, Ralphie. Missy asked Dawn to bring her the phone, but Dawn said cruel things about Ralphie. Unaware he was listening, hurt, Missy left for ballet without the note. Evening came. Missy never returned. The next day passed. Still no word. The family panicked. Dawn stayed home from school. Her mother feared something terrible had happened to both daughters. Her father collapsed in grief. Trying to console him, Dawn quietly said, "Even if Missy is never found, you still have me and Mark." Later, Dawn visited Brandon's house one last time. His gruff father let her inside to say goodbye. They were moving soon. She found Brandon in his room, packing, and with a voice full of longing and trembling honesty, Dawn said the words she'd never dared say before, "I want to be your girlfriend." Brandon's fate was sealed. His father had decided to send him to a correctional facility. Brandon, however, had no plans to go willingly. Expelled from school for drug dealing, he claimed another bully was the real culprit. But no one believed him, not even Dawn. She asked him plainly if he was a dealer. Sarcastically, Brandon replied that maybe now he really would become one. He grabbed his duffel bag and jumped out the window, disappearing into the night. Later, during dinner, Dawn's family received disturbing news. Missy's pink tutu had been found in Times Square, New York. Fearing the worst, Dawn took it upon herself to act. Alone, she traveled to New York City at night, printing out photos of her sister and plastering them on walls and poles. She roamed the streets, asking strangers for help. Then, in a terrifying moment, she saw a man dragging Missy into an alley. Dawn rushed in, screaming for help. In her mind, she became a hero. She rescued her sister, embraced by her mother, who called her the best daughter anyone could ever ask for.
But of course, it was just a dream. In reality, Dawn called home. Her brother Mark answered. Their mother, it seemed, wasn't even that concerned about Dawn's disappearance. He casually informed her that Missy had already been found earlier that day. The truth was shocking. Their neighbor had built a secret bunker in his basement and had kidnapped Missy. Surprisingly, Missy didn't seem traumatized. In fact, she enjoyed having her own TV and full control over the remote. Dawn was left feeling irrelevant once again. Later, she gave a speech at school, thanking everyone for their help in catching the kidnapper. Just as she began to feel seen, a bully shouted that she was a dog, and soon the entire crowd joined in, chanting cruelly until the principal intervened. Life slowly returned to its usual dull rhythm. In the kitchen, Dawn quietly asked Mark if life would always be this awful. Mark, without flinching, told her it was just middle school. He promised that in high school things would change. People would call her by her actual name. She just needed to be patient. This was Welcome to the Dollhouse, a painfully awkward, brutally honest, and oddly relatable journey through the emotional minefield of adolescence.